She was abused by her billionaire CEO ex-husband. Now she's his brain surgeon. The fluorescent lights of Boston Memorial's neurosurgery wing cast harsh shadows across Dr. Vivian Chen's face as she studied the MRI scans. Her fingers traced the outline of the tumor nestled in the frontal lobe. A grade 4 glioblastoma, aggressive and unforgiving. The patient's name glowed on the screen: Maxwell Blackwood, CEO of Helix Innovations. "If you hate me enough to let me die on your table," Maxwell said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I wouldn't blame you." Vivian set down her pen, meeting his gaze. "I took an oath to heal. Unlike the vows we exchanged, I take it seriously. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to hold the life of someone who once tried to destroy you in your hands? To know that with the slightest slip of your scalpel, you could end the existence of a person who made yours a living nightmare? This is the extraordinary story of a woman who faced the ultimate test of character when fate placed her abuser's life literally beneath her skilled fingers. If you've ever had to make an impossible choice between vengeance and virtue, hit that like button right now. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today's timeless love tale isn't about romance in the traditional sense. It's about a different kind of love, the love of one's principles, the love of healing, and perhaps most importantly, the love of oneself that allows us to rise above our darkest moments. The day Vivian Chen discovered Maxwell Blackwood would be her patient began like any other. Rounds with residents, 2 routine surgeries, and then the weekly review of upcoming cases. When his file appeared on her desk, she initially thought it was some cruel joke. 5 years had passed since she'd escaped their marriage, fleeing in the middle of the night with nothing but her medical credentials and the clothes on her back. "Dr. Chen, the board is expecting you in the conference room," Dr. Patel said, appearing at her shoulder. "They're concerned about potential conflicts of interest." Vivian's expression remained neutral, a skill perfected during her 7-year marriage to Maxwell. "There's no conflict. I'm the best neurosurgeon on the East Coast, and he has a tumor that will kill him within months without intervention. The situation is perfectly clear." As she walked toward the conference room, memories surfaced like air bubbles in still water. The early days, brilliant Maxwell courting the promising medical resident with grand gestures and intoxicating attention. The gradual isolation from colleagues and friends. The first time he grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise when she questioned a financial decision. The calculated public charm and private cruelty. The hospital board members sat in uncomfortable silence as Vivian entered. Chairman Winters spoke first. "Dr. Chen, we understand you were previously married to Mr. Blackwood." "Yes, we divorced 5 years ago. Given your personal history, perhaps it would be best if Dr. Sharma took the case." Vivian placed Maxwell's file on the table. "Dr. Sharma is excellent, but he hasn't performed this specific procedure in over 2 years. I've done 7 successful resections of frontal lobe glioblastomas in the past 18 months. The patient deserves the surgeon with the highest probability of success. Mr. Blackwood has specifically requested you," Dr. Rivera added quietly. Of course he had. Maxwell never relinquished control willingly. Even facing mortality, he was orchestrating the scenario, forcing a confrontation. "Then it's settled," Vivian said. "I'll perform the surgery next Tuesday. Unless the board wishes to explain to our largest donor why they assigned him a less experienced surgeon against his wishes." The silence that followed was her answer. Later that evening, as Vivian reviewed surgical protocols in her office, a soft knock interrupted her concentration. Maxwell stood in the doorway, thinner than she remembered, the tumor already stealing pieces of him. "Hello, Vivian." His voice still carried that smooth confidence that had once captivated boardrooms and investors. "You look well. Success suits you. What do you want, Maxwell?" "Medical questions should go through my office." He stepped inside, closing the door. No questions. I just wanted to see you. To understand. Understand what? If you hate me enough to let me die on your table. His directness was new. Perhaps the tumor pressing against his frontal lobe, perhaps the proximity of death stripping away pretense. Vivian set down her pen, meeting his gaze. I took an oath to heal. Unlike the vows we exchanged, I take it seriously. A flicker of the old anger crossed his face before dissolving into something more complex. I deserve that. I deserve worse. He sank into the chair across from her desk. The tumor's affecting my memory. Pieces of our marriage are fragmented. But I remember enough to know I was cruel to you. Cruel is breaking a promise. You were abusive, Maxwell. You systematically destroyed my confidence, isolated me from support, and made me believe I was worthless without you. He didn't deny it. And now my life depends on your skill and ethics. There's a certain poetry there. This isn't poetry. It's medicine. I'll remove your tumor because it's my job, not because I've forgiven you. Maxwell nodded slowly. Fair enough. But before you cut into my brain, there's something you should know. He reached into his jacket, withdrawing an envelope. This arrived yesterday from my lawyers. Apparently, I changed my will 3 years ago. You're still listed as my primary beneficiary. Vivian stared at the document, ice forming in her veins. Change it. There's no time. The tumor's growing aggressively. And frankly, there's a certain justice in you inheriting everything I built while destroying you. I don't want your money. 51% of Helix Innovations isn't just money, Vivian. It's power. The power to transform the company that consumed me into something better. His eyes, once sharp with ambition, now held something like resignation. Consider it reparations. Imagine holding the life of your abuser in your hands. What would you do? If this moral dilemma has you on the edge of your seat, subscribe now for more stories that explore the depths of human resilience. After Maxwell left, Vivian sat motionless, the surgical protocols forgotten. He had laid a perfect trap. If she saved him, he would continue his empire unchecked. If she made even the slightest error during surgery, she would inherit billions tainted by their history and face inevitable accusations of deliberate malpractice. That night, Vivian called the one person who had stood by her through the divorce, her sister, May. He's manipulating you, May said after hearing the situation. Creating impossible choices was always his specialty. What would you do? Vivian asked, staring out at Boston's glittering skyline. I'd walk away. Let another surgeon take the risk. And if he dies under someone else's care, then you're free. Truly free. But Vivian knew she wouldn't be. Freedom wasn't built on abandoned responsibilities or ethical compromises. She had rebuilt herself by reclaiming her excellence, her purpose. Stepping away now would be surrendering to fear, exactly what Maxwell had conditioned her to do during their marriage. To understand the weight of Vivian's decision, we need to go back to where it all began. 10 years earlier, Vivian Chun was a promising neurosurgical resident at Massachusetts General Hospital. Brilliant, dedicated, with steady hands and an innovative mind, she was already being noticed by department heads across the country. The night she met Maxwell Blackwood changed everything. He was the keynote speaker at a medical technology fundraiser, charismatic, visionary, with a reputation for transforming struggling biotech startups into industry leaders. When he singled her out during the reception, asking detailed questions about her research in neural regeneration, Vivian was flattered but cautious. Most CEOs I meet want to talk about golf or their stock options, she told him. Not the intricate details of axonal growth factors. Maxwell's smile had been disarming. I'm not most CEOs. and you're clearly not most residents. Have dinner with me tomorrow. I want to hear more about your theories on post-trauma neural pathways. Their courtship was a whirlwind of intellectual connection and undeniable chemistry. Maxwell seemed to understand her ambition, her dedication to medicine. He sent research papers instead of flowers, arranged meetings with leading neuroscientists, listened intently when she spoke about her dreams of revolutionizing brain surgery techniques. "You're extraordinary, Vivian," he told her 6 months later, as he proposed on the rooftop garden of his penthouse. "Together we could change the world." The first signs of trouble appeared subtly, almost imperceptibly. Maxwell suggested she transfer to Boston Memorial, where he had connections on the board. "It's a better program for your specialty," he insisted, "and closer to Helix headquarters." When she hesitated, concerned about leaving her established mentorships, his disappointment was palpable. "I thought you were serious about advancing your career. This is an opportunity most residents would kill for." She made the transfer, telling herself it was a logical career move. And at first it seemed to be. Maxwell's connections opened doors, accelerated her access to cutting-edge research. Their wedding was small but elegant, covered by both medical journals and business publications. The brilliant surgeon and the biotech visionary, a power couple bridging science and industry. The changes in their relationship after marriage were gradual but relentless. Maxwell's suggestions became expectations. His interest in her work shifted from supportive to controlling. He questioned her late nights at the hospital, her male colleagues, her research priorities. "You're spending too much time on that spinal regeneration study," he said one evening, reviewing her research notes without permission. "The neural interface technology has more immediate commercial applications." "That's not why I'm doing the research," Vivian replied. "The spinal work could help thousands of paralysis patients, and the interface work could help millions while securing your reputation. I'm just looking out for your career, Vivian. You sometimes miss the bigger picture." The first physical incident came 2 years into their marriage. Vivian had questioned a financial decision Maxwell had made, moving funds from her personal account into a joint investment without consulting her. "It's a time-sensitive opportunity," he explained dismissively. "I didn't want to bother you with details while you were preparing for that surgery." "That's not the point, Maxwell. That money was from my grandmother. You should have asked me." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with bruising force. "Don't question my judgment on financial matters. Ever." His voice remained eerily calm, even as his fingers tightened. "I've built a billion-dollar company. I think I can handle your inheritance." Later, he sent roses to her office. "I'm sorry I was short with you," the card read. "The pressure of the merger negotiations has me on edge. Forgive me?" She did, and she forgave him after the next incident. And the next. Each followed the same pattern: escalation, apology, a period of remorse and renewed attentiveness, then gradual resumption of control. Classic abuse cycle she would later recognize in therapy. But in the moment, she was too close to see the pattern, too isolated to gain perspective. The scars we carry often become the source of our greatest strength. Maxwell's public persona remained impeccable: generous philanthropist, visionary leader, devoted husband supporting his wife's medical career. In private, he systematically dismantled Vivian's independence, confidence, and connections. "Dr. Winters mentioned you seemed distracted during rounds," he would say casually. "Are you sure you're ready for that attending position? Your friend Rebecca called again. I told her you were too busy to come to her wedding. Those college friendships are holding you back professionally anyway. That dress makes you look desperate for attention. Is that the image you want to project as a surgeon?" By their 5th anniversary, Vivian barely recognized herself. Her surgical skills remained exceptional. The operating room was the one place Maxwell couldn't follow, couldn't control. But outside the hospital, she had become a shadow, carefully measuring her words, her actions, her very thoughts against his potential disapproval. The breaking point came during a Helix Innovations gala. Maxwell had insisted she attend despite her being on call. "Dr. Myers can cover for you," he said. "This event is important for our image." During the dinner, Vivian engaged in conversation with Dr. James Harrington, a renowned neuroscientist whose work she had long admired. Their discussion about emerging surgical techniques was the most intellectually stimulating conversation she'd had in months. Later that night, in their penthouse, Maxwell's rage was terrifying. "You embarrassed me tonight," he said, voice deadly quiet as he removed his cufflinks. "Flirting with Harrington in front of my investors, my colleagues. We were discussing his research on glioblastoma treatment protocols," Vivian replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "It was a professional conversation. You touched his arm. Twice. You laughed at his jokes. You were performing for him. Maxwell, that's ridiculous. He's 70 years old and happily married. We were talking about medicine." The blow came without warning. Maxwell shoved her hard against the bedroom wall, his forearm pressing against her throat. "Don't you dare call me ridiculous," he hissed. "I made you. Everything you have, your position at Memorial, your research funding, your reputation exists because of me. Without me, you're nothing." In that moment, looking into his eyes, Vivian saw something that chilled her more than the physical violence. Complete conviction. Maxwell truly believed he owned her, had created her, controlled her worth and destiny. That night, after he had fallen asleep, Vivian packed a small bag with essential documents and left. She took nothing else. Not clothes, not jewelry, not the wedding photos or medical awards. Just her credentials, her passport, and the emergency cash she'd been secretly saving in her locker at the hospital. The next 5 years were a testament to her resilience. Maxwell's influence made finding another position in Boston impossible. So she moved to Chicago, starting over as a general neurosurgeon at a county hospital. No prestigious title, no research budget, just grueling hours and challenging cases that others avoided. "You're overqualified for this position," the medical director had told her during the interview, "and underexplained about why you're seeking it. I need a fresh start," was all she said. "And these patients need good care." She worked relentlessly, rebuilding her reputation surgery by surgery. When Maxwell's lawyers found her, and they did 6 months later, she refused the settlement offers, the threats, the attempts to lure her back. "Tell Mr. Blackwood that my silence isn't for sale," she instructed her attorney. "I don't want his money. I just want to be left alone." Eventually, the legal harassment stopped. Whether Maxwell had lost interest or found another target, Vivian didn't know or care. She focused on her work, her healing, her gradual reclamation of confidence and purpose. 3 years after leaving Boston, she was recruited back to the East Coast, not by Maxwell's connections, but by her own impressive surgical outcomes and innovative techniques developed in Chicago. Boston Memorial offered her the position of head of neurosurgery, a role she had once dreamed of but never thought possible after her escape. "We're aware of your previous association with Maxwell Blackwood," Chairman Winters had said during her final interview. "He remains one of our largest donors. Will that be a problem?" "Mr. Blackwood and I have no contact," Vivian replied calmly. "My personal history won't affect my professional performance. If it will affect the board's decision, I'd prefer to know now. The board is interested in surgical excellence, Dr. Chun. Your record speaks for itself." And so Vivian returned to Boston, to the hospital where her nightmare had begun, now as one of its most powerful physicians. She avoided the galas and fundraisers where she might encounter Maxwell, focused on building a department known for both cutting-edge research and compassionate care. For 2 years, their paths never crossed. Maxwell's name appeared occasionally on donor lists or hospital press releases, but he remained a ghost from her past, present in memory but absent in reality, until the day his MRI scans appeared on her desk, and the past and present collided with the force of worlds meeting. Now, facing the impossible choice Maxwell had engineered, Vivian stood at her apartment window, phone still in hand after May's call. The city lights blurred as she considered her options. Walking away would be the safest choice. Dr. Sharma was competent, if not as experienced with this particular procedure. Maxwell would receive adequate care. If he survived, she would avoid the complication of being tied to him through his will. If he died, no one could accuse her of malpractice or manipulation. But walking away meant allowing fear to dictate her actions again. It meant acknowledging that even now, years later, Maxwell still held power over her choices, her courage, her commitment to medicine. "No," she whispered to the empty room. "Not this time." The morning of the surgery arrived with crystalline clarity. Vivian moved through pre-op procedures with practiced precision, her team responding to her quiet authority. When Maxwell was wheeled in, already sedated, she felt nothing but professional focus. "Scalpel," she said and began. The operating room fell into the familiar rhythm of a complex neurosurgical procedure. The steady beep of monitors, the soft requests for instruments, the concentrated silence as Vivian navigated the delicate landscape of Maxwell's brain. The tumor had grown tentacles around critical structures, making a complete resection challenging without risking permanent damage. "Suction here," she directed her assistant. "We need better visualization of the anterior margin." For hours in, they encountered unexpected bleeding. "BP's dropping," the anesthesiologist warned. 90/60 and falling. "I've nicked a vessel," Vivian said, her voice calm despite the crisis. "Bipolar forceps and patties." For 10 seconds, she worked to control the hemorrhage, acutely aware that any delay could result in brain damage or death. Her hands remained steady, her focus absolute. This wasn't Maxwell Blackwood beneath her instruments. This was a human brain, the most complex structure in the known universe, and her responsibility to protect. "Bleeding's controlled," she announced finally. "Let's continue with the resection." 6 hours after the first incision, Vivian stepped back from the table. "We've achieved maximum safe resection. Approximately 94% of the tumor mass removed. Let's begin closure." As her team prepared to close, Vivian studied the surgical field one last time. She had done everything possible, removed every accessible part of the tumor without compromising critical brain structures. The remaining cancer cells would require radiation and chemotherapy, but she had given Maxwell the best possible chance at extended survival. She had kept her oath. "Family of Maxwell Blackwood?" She called into the waiting area after changing out of her surgical scrubs. A young woman rose, Cassandra, Maxwell's assistant, whom Vivian remembered from the final year of her marriage. Behind her stood James Blackwood, Maxwell's younger brother and CFO of Helix. "He's stable," Vivian explained. "We removed approximately 94% of the tumor mass, which is excellent for this type of cancer. He'll need to begin radiation and chemotherapy once he recovers from surgery." "Thank you, Dr. Chun," Cassandra said, genuine gratitude in her eyes. "I know this couldn't have been easy for you." James stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "My brother doesn't deserve your skill or your ethics, but I'm grateful you have both." The comment startled Vivian. During her marriage, James had been Maxwell's shadow, seemingly in awe of his brilliant older brother. This acknowledgement suggested a shift in dynamics she hadn't anticipated. "I was doing my job," she replied simply. "The post-op team will update you when he's moved to recovery. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is refusing to become what hurt you." 3 days later, Maxwell regained consciousness. Vivian was reviewing his post-op scans when a nurse called from his room. "Dr. Chun, he's asking for you." Maxwell lay propped against pillows, a shadow of the commanding presence he'd once been. A surgical bandage wrapped his head where they'd shaved his once perfect hair. "You did it," he said, voice raspy from the intubation tube. "The surgery was successful. The cancer isn't cured, but we've bought you time." He nodded slightly, wincing at the movement. "Time I don't deserve." His eyes, clearer than they'd been in their previous meeting, fixed on hers. "I remember everything now. What I did to you. The night you left." Vivian's chest tightened. The night she'd finally fled had come after he'd thrown her against a wall for speaking to a male colleague at a company event, leaving bruises that had taken weeks to fade. "I'm not here to discuss our past. No, but I need to say this while I still can." Maxwell's fingers plucked restlessly at the hospital blanket. "I've spent 5 years telling myself a story where I was justified, where you were ungrateful, ambitious at my expense. The tumor stripped away that fiction. I see myself clearly now, and it's horrifying." Vivian remained silent, unwilling to offer absolution. "I've instructed James to transfer controlling interest in Helix to you immediately, not after my death. The paperwork is being drawn up. The company's developing breakthrough treatments for neurological disorders, work that could help thousands. It should be guided by someone with both brilliance and compassion. I'm a surgeon, not a CEO. You're both. You always were." A ghost of his old certainty flickered across his face. "You built yourself from nothing after I tried to destroy you. Helix will flourish under your vision in ways it never could under mine." "Why are you doing this, Maxwell? Guilt? Manipulation? Some twisted attempt at redemption?" He closed his eyes briefly. "All of those, probably. The tumors in my frontal lobe, the part that controls personality, impulse regulation, moral reasoning. The doctors say it's been growing for years, affecting my behavior gradually." "Don't blame your abuse on a tumor," Vivian said sharply. "You were controlling from the beginning. I'm not making excuses, just trying to understand myself before I die." His gaze met hers again. "The tumor may have amplified my worst qualities, but those qualities were mine. The cruelty, the need for control, that was me. Is me." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Chun, your next surgery is being prepped." "I'll be right there." Vivian turned back to Maxwell. "I need to go." "Vivian." His voice stopped her at the door. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But please consider taking Helix. Not for me, for what you could do with it." She left without answering, her mind already shifting to her next patient. A 16-year-old with a benign tumor pressing on her optic nerve. This was where she belonged. In the operating room, saving lives, not dwelling in the shadows of her past. But Maxwell's offer lingered in her thoughts. Helix Innovations was developing groundbreaking neural interface technology that could revolutionize treatment for paralysis patients, the very research she had been passionate about before Maxwell redirected her focus. With the company's resources behind her original vision, how many lives could be transformed? That evening, she met with James Blackwood at a quiet restaurant away from the hospital. "He's serious about the transfer," James confirmed, sliding a folder across the table. 51% controlling interest, effective immediately. No strings attached. There are always strings with Maxwell. James's expression softened slightly. "Not this time. The tumor has changed him, Vivian, or perhaps revealed him. He knows he's dying, and he's trying to put right what he can. Why me? After everything. Because you're the only person he's ever truly respected. Even when he was controlling you, he was in awe of you. Your brilliance, your compassion, your integrity. James hesitated. And because he knows you'll use Helix for something meaningful, not just profit. Vivian opened the folder, scanning the legal documents. I'd need to maintain my surgical practice. I'm not giving up medicine. We anticipated that. The proposal includes appointing a COO to handle day-to-day operations. You would guide research priorities and major strategic decisions. And if I refuse, then the shares go into a charitable trust after his death. But he hopes you'll accept. Vivian closed the folder. I need time to think. Of course, but not too much time. His prognosis is measured in months, not years. If you believe in the power of forgiveness not as absolution but as freedom, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. The next weeks passed in a blur of surgeries, follow-up appointments, and late nights reviewing Helix's research portfolios. Maxwell began radiation therapy, the treatment further depleting his once formidable energy. Vivian monitored his progress professionally but maintained emotional distance. 1 month after the surgery, she made her decision. She arranged a meeting with Maxwell in his private room at the hospital's VIP wing. I'll accept controlling interest in Helix, she told him without preamble. With conditions. Maxwell, noticeably thinner but clear-eyed, nodded. Name them. First, the neural regeneration research gets priority funding. The work I wanted to pursue before you redirected me. Done. Second, Helix establishes a foundation for domestic violence survivors, focusing on professional women whose careers were derailed by abusive partners. Educational grants, job placement, legal support. A flicker of pain crossed his face. Yes, that's appropriate. Third, you step down as CEO immediately. Not when you're too sick to function now. I won't have the company destabilized by a gradual transition. James is prepared to take interim leadership until you're ready. Vivian nodded. Those are my terms. I accept them all. Maxwell's gaze held hers. Thank you for not refusing out of spite. The company has potential to do tremendous good under your guidance. I'm not doing it for you. I know. That's why you're the right person. He hesitated. There's one more thing. Not a condition, a request. Will you hear it? Vivian tensed but nodded. When the time comes, and it will come sooner than the oncologists are telling me, I'd like you to be my physician. Not for more surgery, but for end-of-life care. The request stunned her. Why? Because you'll be honest with me. Because you won't prolong my suffering out of misplaced compassion. Because you, more than anyone, have earned the right to witness the end of what I was. Vivian felt an unexpected surge of emotion. Not forgiveness, not quite compassion, but something adjacent to both. I'll consider it. 2 months later, Vivian stood at the podium of Helix Innovations Research Facility, announcing a new initiative focusing on traumatic brain injury treatments for domestic violence survivors. The irony wasn't lost on her. Using Maxwell's company and fortune to heal the very type of wounds he had inflicted. Maxwell attended the announcement in a wheelchair, visibly weakened by his ongoing treatment but determined to witness this transformation. Their eyes met briefly across the crowded atrium. No words passed between them, none were needed. She had cut into his brain and emerged with her integrity intact. He had lost everything and found a sliver of redemption in that loss. The Resilience Initiative will combine cutting-edge neurological research with practical support systems, Vivian explained to the assembled press and medical community. Brain injuries from physical trauma often go undiagnosed in domestic violence survivors, leading to cognitive and emotional challenges that can persist for years after they've escaped their abusers. The audience listened intently as she outlined the three-pronged approach. Advanced diagnostic protocols specifically designed to detect subtle brain injuries, innovative treatment methodologies, and comprehensive support services including housing assistance, legal aid, and career counseling. As medical professionals, we often treat the visible wounds while missing the invisible ones, she continued. As a society, we ask survivors why they didn't leave sooner, without understanding how trauma physically alters brain function, decision-making, and perception of risk. The Resilience Initiative aims to change that narrative through science, education, and compassion. The questions afterward were thoughtful, engaged. No one directly mentioned the obvious connection between Vivian's past with Maxwell and this particular focus, though the speculation was evident in sidelong glances and whispered conversations. As the event concluded, James approached her. Powerful presentation. The research community is already buzzing about potential collaborations. Good. We'll need partners to make this work at scale. Maxwell would like to speak with you, if you have a moment. James nodded toward the corner where Maxwell's wheelchair was positioned, somewhat removed from the departing crowd. Vivian hesitated, then nodded. I'll be right there. She made her way across the room, accepting congratulations and exchanging brief words with colleagues. When she reached Maxwell, she was struck by how rapidly he had declined in the weeks since his last follow-up appointment. The radiation and chemotherapy had taken their toll, leaving him gaunt and ashen. "Congratulations," he said, his voice weaker than she remembered. "You've accomplished more in 2 months than I did in 2 years." The groundwork was already there in the research division. It just needed direction. "Your direction." He gestured to the chair beside him. "May I have 5 minutes of your time? As a patient, not as whatever we are to each other now." Vivian sat, maintaining professional composure. "What can I do for you?" "The headaches are getting worse. The new MRI shows progression despite treatment." His clinical detachment might have seemed cold to others, but Vivian recognized it as a coping mechanism they both shared. "I'd like to discuss palliative options. Have you spoken with Dr. Reeves? She's heading your oncology team." "Yes, she's recommended hospice care within the next few weeks." "I'd like your opinion as my neurosurgeon." Vivian considered her response carefully. "The tumor is behaving as expected for a glioblastoma. The treatment has slowed progression but not stopped it. Dr. Reeves's recommendation is sound from a medical perspective." Maxwell nodded slightly. "And my earlier request? About end-of-life care? I've spoken with the palliative care team. I'll oversee your case in conjunction with them." Relief flickered across his features. "Thank you." As Vivian stood to leave, Maxwell reached for her hand. The first voluntary physical contact between them since before she'd left him. She allowed it briefly. "The Resilience Initiative," he said quietly. "It's perfect. Using what broke you to heal others." "It didn't break me," Vivian corrected him. "It nearly did. But here I am." "Yes, here you are." His fingers slipped from hers. "Stronger at the broken places." 3 weeks later, Maxwell was moved to the palliative care unit. His decline accelerated rapidly, the tumor's growth outpacing even the most aggressive pain management protocols. Vivian visited daily, reviewing his care plan, ensuring his comfort, maintaining the professional distance that protected them both. On a rainy Tuesday evening, she entered his room to find him unusually alert, sitting up slightly against his pillows. "I've been waiting for you," he said. "There's something I need to tell you." Vivian checked his medication chart before responding. "Your pain levels? Manageable." This isn't about that. He gestured weakly to the chair beside the bed. Please, it's important. She sat, noting the yellow tinge to his skin, the pronounced hollows beneath his cheekbones. The end was very near. I found your journal, he said, after you left. The one you kept hidden in your medical textbooks. Vivian stiffened. The journal had documented the abuse, dates, incidents, her feelings, her growing fear. She'd left it behind in her hurried escape, had worried for months that he might use it against her somehow. I read it, Maxwell continued. Every page, every word. His breathing was labored between sentences. It was like reading about a stranger, a monster. But it was me. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve to know that I saw the truth, that I couldn't hide from it anymore. His eyes, sunken but clear, held hers. The journal is in the safe at the penthouse. James has instructions to return it to you. Vivian felt an unexpected weight lift from her shoulders. Not forgiveness, but validation. For years, Maxwell had denied the reality of his abuse, had twisted events to blame her, had made her question her own memories and perceptions. Now, at the end, he was acknowledging the truth. Thank you for telling me, she said simply. There's more. Maxwell's voice was fading, the brief surge of energy waning. I've recorded a statement. Full admission of what I did to you. It's with my lawyer, to be released after my death if you ever want it public. Why would I want that? Vindication, closure, or to protect others from men like me. His eyes drifted closed momentarily. Your choice. Always your choice now. Vivian sat with him until he fell asleep, watching the shallow rise and fall of his chest, the occasional twitch of his fingers. The man before her bore little resemblance to the charismatic, controlling figure who had once dominated her life. Death was the great equalizer, stripping away power, pretense, position. 2 days later, Maxwell Blackwood slipped into a coma. Vivian was performing surgery when it happened, deep in concentration as she removed a tumor from a 10-year-old boy's cerebellum. When she emerged from the operating room, James was waiting. He's gone, James said simply, peaceful at the end. The nurses said he just let go. Vivian nodded, absorbing the news with a complex mixture of emotions she couldn't immediately identify. I'm sorry for your loss. Are you? James asked, not unkindly. Yes, she realized, somewhat surprised. Not for the man who hurt me, but for the man he might have been. For the brother you loved despite his flaws. James's eyes filled with unexpected tears. Thank you for that. For seeing the distinction. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity, Maxwell's funeral, which Vivian did not attend, the formal announcement of her position as controlling shareholder of Helix Innovations, the launch of the first clinical trials under the Resilience Initiative. She moved through it all with focused determination, channeling her energy into the work rather than dwelling on the complicated emotions surrounding Maxwell's death. 1 month after the funeral, James delivered a small package to her office. From Maxwell, he explained. He asked that I wait until things had settled before giving it to you. Alone that evening, Vivian opened the package to find her journal, its leather cover worn but intact, and a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, the script shaky but legible. Vivian, it began. If you're reading this, I've finally done the one thing you wanted. I've disappeared from your life permanently. There are no adequate words for what I did to you, no explanation that justifies it, no apology that erases it. I won't insult you by trying. Instead, I want you to know that in my final months, with my mind clearer than it had been in years, I came to understand something. You were never the broken one. It was me, always me. You were extraordinary from the first moment I saw you, and my greatest crime was trying to diminish that light because it exposed the darkness in me. The company is yours now to shape according to your vision, the vision I once claimed to support before I tried to control it. The fortune is yours, to use or give away as you see fit. Consider it not as blood money or guilt payment, but as resources returned to their rightful owner. You earned this power through your brilliance and resilience long before you cut into my brain. I leave you with one final truth. You held my life in your hands, and you chose healing over harm. That choice defines you far more than anything I ever did to you. Maxwell. Vivian set the letter down, tears falling freely for the first time since she'd left him 5 years earlier. Not tears of grief or forgiveness, but of release, of letting go of the last tendrils of fear, doubt, and anger that had wound themselves around her heart. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment sharing a time when you chose healing over hatred. I'm Mr. Harrison, and I'll see you in the next timeless love tale. 6 months later, Vivian stood in the newly opened Resilience Center, watching as the first group of survivors toured the facility. The center combined cutting-edge medical treatment with comprehensive support services. Everything from neurological care to legal assistance, housing support to career counseling. Dr. Chun, a young woman, approached hesitantly. I just wanted to thank you. Your research on traumatic brain injury helped my doctors finally diagnose what was happening to me after years of my ex-husband's abuse. The treatments here have given me my life back. Vivian smiled, genuinely moved. I'm glad we could help. That's exactly why this center exists. As the woman moved on, Vivian caught sight of her reflection in a nearby window. Confident, purposeful, whole. The journey from victim to victor had been long and painful, but standing here, witnessing the tangible impact of her work, she knew every step had been necessary. She had entered Maxwell's orbit as a brilliant young doctor, been diminished by his abuse, and emerged as both healer and leader. The journey had left scars, but scars were evidence of survival, of wounds that had closed and healed stronger than before. The power to heal and the power to harm had always existed in her skilled hands. In choosing the former, even for the man who had broken her, she had finally completed her own reconstruction. And in that choice lay the most profound victory of all. As the Resilience Center flourished, expanding to 3 additional locations across the country within the first year, Vivian maintained her surgical practice alongside her leadership of Helix Innovations. The balance wasn't always easy, but it fulfilled both sides of her nature. The healer who worked with her hands and the visionary who could transform systems. On the anniversary of Maxwell's death, Vivian visited his grave alone. She brought no flowers, said no prayers. She simply stood in silence, acknowledging the complex intersection of their lives. How someone who had caused her such pain had ultimately, unwittingly, helped create her greatest purpose. Dr. Chun. A voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find James Blackwood approaching, surprise evident on his face. I didn't expect to see you here. Neither did I, she admitted. It felt important somehow, to mark the day. James nodded, understanding in his eyes. The board meeting yesterday, your presentation on expanding the neural interface technology to pediatric applications was remarkable. Maxwell would have been proud. No, Vivian said gently. He would have been threatened. The old Maxwell, at least. That's the difference between building something for yourself and building something for others. They walked together toward the cemetery gates. An unexpected companionship formed in the aftermath of complicated grief. The journal, James said hesitantly. Did it help? Having it back. Vivian considered the question. After reading Maxwell's letter, she had opened the journal, confronting her own words from those dark years. The pain documented in those pages had been raw, immediate. but reading it from the perspective of the woman she had become, strong, independent, purposeful, had transformed the experience from reopening a wound to witnessing her own survival. "Yes," she answered finally. "It reminded me how far I've come, how much I've reclaimed." The statement he recorded, the admission. "Have you decided what to do with it?" Vivian had wrestled with this question for months. Making Maxwell's abuse public would validate her experience, potentially help other women recognize warning signs she had missed. But it would also define her forever in relation to him, the brilliant surgeon who had been Maxwell Blackwood's abused wife, rather than Dr. Vivian Chen in her own right. "I'm keeping it private," she said, "not to protect his memory, but to own my story on my terms. The work we're doing with the Resilience Initiative speaks louder than any confession." James nodded. "I think that's wise." As they reached the parking lot, Vivian's phone chimed with a hospital alert. "I need to go. Emergency craniotomy." "Of course." James hesitated, then added, "He wasn't always the man you knew. Before the power, before the tumor. There was goodness there once." Vivian offered a small smile. "I believe you. We all contain multitudes. The tragedy is when we let our darkest impulses eclipse our better nature." Driving to the hospital, Vivian reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. If someone had told her 6 years ago, as she fled her marriage with nothing but her credentials and determination, that she would one day control Maxwell's company, transform it into a force for healing, and find peace in the process, she would have thought it impossible. Yet here she was, not defined by what had been done to her, but by what she had chosen to do in response. In the operating room an hour later, Vivian stood over a young woman with a traumatic brain injury, the result of domestic violence. The parallels weren't lost on her as she carefully navigated the delicate tissues, repairing what had been damaged. "BP stable," the anesthesiologist reported. "Vitals looking good." Vivian worked with practiced precision, each movement deliberate and confident. This was her element, where skill met purpose, where damage could be repaired, where healing was not just possible but probable. "There's the bleeder," she murmured, identifying the source of pressure on the brain. "Bipolar forceps, please." As she completed the procedure, Vivian felt the familiar sense of rightness that came with using her abilities to their fullest potential. This was what Maxwell had tried to diminish, to control, to redirect for his own purposes. This gift that was uniquely hers. "Nice work, Dr. Chun," her resident said as they closed. "Clean margins, minimal tissue disruption. She'll need comprehensive follow-up," Vivian instructed. "Not just physical recovery but psychological support. Make sure she's connected with the Resilience Center before discharge." Later, in her office, Vivian updated the patient's family. "The surgery was successful. We've relieved the pressure on her brain and repaired the damaged blood vessels. Recovery will take time, but she has every chance of a full return to function. Will she be herself again?" the patient's sister asked, fear and hope mingling in her voice. "The brain has remarkable plasticity," Vivian explained. "It can create new pathways, adapt to injury, rebuild what was damaged. But she'll need support, medical, emotional, practical. And she'll need to believe in her own capacity to heal." "Like you did," the sister said unexpectedly. "After Maxwell Blackwood." Vivian stilled, surprised by the direct reference. She rarely discussed her past publicly, though the connection between her history and her work was an open secret in medical circles. "Yes," she acknowledged simply. "Like I did. That's why my sister wanted you as her surgeon. She said if anyone would understand what she's been through, it would be you." Vivian felt a wave of emotion, not the shame or discomfort she might once have felt at having her past exposed, but a profound sense of purpose. Her journey had not only healed her but positioned her to help others in ways no one else could. "Tell your sister when she wakes up that I'm not just her surgeon," Vivian said. "I'm her witness. I see her courage, and I recognize her path. And I'll be here to help her find her way forward." That evening, as Vivian walked through the research wing of Helix Innovations, she paused to observe a team working on the neural regeneration project, her original passion, now fully funded and advancing rapidly. The lead scientist noticed her and waved her in. "Dr. Chun, perfect timing. We've just received the preliminary results from the spinal cord trial. The neural interface is showing a 68% success rate in restoring partial mobility." Vivian reviewed the data, excitement building. "This could change thousands of lives." "It already is," the scientist replied, "and it wouldn't exist without your vision." As she drove home that night, Vivian reflected on the strange alchemy of her life, how suffering had been transformed into purpose, how loss had created space for new growth, how the very person who had tried to diminish her had ultimately provided the platform for her greatest work. Not because he had intended it. Not because abuse had made her stronger, that dangerous, false narrative that romanticized suffering. But because she had refused to let his darkness define her. Because she had chosen, again and again, to reclaim her power through healing rather than vengeance. In her living room, Vivian opened the small box where she kept Maxwell's letter and her journal. Beside them now lay a third item, a handwritten note from the first patient to complete the resilience program. "Dr. Chun," it read, "when I came to the center, I believed I was irreparably broken, that the person I had been before the abuse was gone forever. Through your program, I've discovered that's not true. The pieces of myself I thought were lost were just waiting to be reclaimed. Thank you for showing me that survival is just the beginning, that what comes after can be more beautiful than what came before." Vivian closed the box, a sense of completion washing over her. The circle that had begun with her own healing had expanded to encompass others, creating ripples that would continue long after her own story had ended. She was Dr. Vivian Chen, neurosurgeon, innovator, survivor. The woman who had held her abuser's life in her hands and chosen mercy. The healer who had transformed trauma into purpose. The phoenix who had risen from the ashes of her past not just to survive, but to thrive and help others do the same. In the quiet of her home, surrounded by the life she had built on her own terms, Vivian finally understood the truth that had eluded her for so long. True power wasn't found in controlling others, as Maxwell had believed. It was found in controlling yourself, your choices, your responses, your purpose. And in that realization lay the most profound freedom of all. If the story touched your heart, leave a comment sharing a time when you chose healing over hatred. I'm Mr. Harrison, and I'll see you in the next timeless love tale.